Hi, I'm Owen, the host of the Australian Finance Podcast. This podcast is proudly sponsored by BetaShares, one of the leading providers of ETFs here in Australia. Serving thousands of financial advisors and over 1 million investors, BetaShares manages tens of billions of dollars on behalf of investors right across the country. I'm proud to partner with BetaShares on the Australian Finance Podcast, Australia's premier financial podcast, because there is great alignment in the long-term philosophy shared by both businesses. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Australian Finance Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information. Jason, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Owen.
You're in Melbourne. It's summer, so it's hot.
It's a blistering day here. Coming over from New Zealand, this feels like we're just stepping into the gates of Hades. I mean, it's a beautiful city. Nothing at all like Hades, but it's taken us about 30 minutes for me to get the sweat dried off my face. So, but I'm loving it.
And we're loving the shirt. For anyone that's watching, loving the colorful shirt, mate.
I just want to tell you, this is thrifted. It's a rod and gun. I got it for $25 in Bondi, and it's linen. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, one of my passions. Vintage shopping.
Actually, I did hear that. And my first question to you was going to be, when it comes to spending money on things, what do you prioritize and why? And I did see that. So that's one of the things.
Yeah. I love vintage shopping. And Melbourne is incredible for it, as you would know. It's just about the finds. And I love bargains. And I love the idea of reuse. So something that's been loved and passed on, and it gets a second life, and it changes the story of what you're going to wear quite dramatically based on what you see, and ultimately, things aren't going to the tip. That you feel good about it in all aspects. I love it.
Yeah, the 3 R's is it reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yeah. In fact, I was in Japan a couple of weeks ago, and they've got this amazing vintage, a culture around vintage luxury. Mm-hmm. And it's well known for people who hunt for bargains that Japan is the place to go because they take very good care of their things.
Yeah.
They don't hoard, so they're quite happy to pass things on, and there's a glut of it. So things are priced quite reasonably. And people wear luxury goods not to flex, but more of an expression of who they are and what they value. So it's been really nice to be engaged with it and to find some real bargains there as well.
I think I heard that's a similar story to that. Maybe it was from you last time we caught up, but there was something else I wanted to double click on here, which is I did get the scoop from Dora on some of the things you do like to spend money on.
Oh, yes.
And travel, these types of things are up there. Cocktails, vintage shopping you mentioned. But there was another thing which I thought was a really interesting phrase, which is life-affirming. Yeah. What does that mean? How do you spend on life-affirming things?
It's a very good question. It depends on what's life-affirming to you.
Yes.
For me, I think travel is a big part of it. I think getting out of my home environment and getting out of the usual routine and being open to new experiences, meeting people, learning stuff, tasting new things, seeing new things. I feel strongly that part of the human experience is the ability to be awed by anything. And travel really brings a lot of that to me. And I guess by a life-affirming, I'll tell you a story about how. So I was in Naples, dragging my bag up a hill, and the cobbled roads knocked a couple of the wheels off my bag, and then a whole bunch of elderly Italian people came around, and from what I could gather, they were saying that, "Hey, man, your wheels have popped off your bag," and I'm like, "Yeah, thanks." And so I had to carry this thing up the hill like a donkey. And for the next few days, I figured out, what am I going to do with this? Who's going to be able to fix this for me? So I emptied everything out, walked up the street and found a cobbler. And he worked in a tiny shop. He had a bunch of older people sitting in there who didn't seem to have anything to do with their business. And it was just like a place to gather and hang out. And he was game to fix this bag for me. But what I got from that experience was that, he was so excited to have someone who didn't speak Italian in his little part of the city. He brought me coffee. He sat down. We tried to use Translate to talk to each other. I can't speak Italian. He can't speak English. And over the next few days, as I go back and see the progress of my bag, I got to understand the community a little bit better. That to me is a bit of a life-affirming experience. And it has to do with just chance, And I think all of these, there are experiences waiting around every corner. And so I love spending money on that. It doesn't cost a lot, but I think it costs a little bit to put yourself in these situations to have these experiences.
So when I saw Life-affirming, I thought there's an activity that we do with our community, which is where we call it your ideal Tuesday, which is like, imagine the day that you wake up. It's a Tuesday, so it's probably a working day for most people. What are the activities that you're doing in the morning, before work, during work, if you work, after work? Are you watching Netflix on the couch? Are you hanging with your family, doing whatever you do? If people actually sit down and take the time to map out what their ideal Tuesday looks like, and then maybe their ideal Saturday, then they have this kind of picture of what they actually want in life, because they're designing their life, right? And then they can say, well, where am I spending my money? Like, is my money moving me towards those things? Or have I got a fancy car and I work from home?
Am I filling a hole somewhere?
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're not being intentional. So in that case, a car would not be life-affirming. It would be something that just is more stress than anything else.
Box ticking exercise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I love that idea of life-affirming spending, life-affirming activities that you might want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I did read another anecdote, which is that in one moment you try to, or you do attempt to use Pocketsmith to track your diet.
I do, yes. So this is why I love our product. Every now and then I take a step back and I try to throw a curveball at it. And I think, can it do this for me? So what I've learned quite late in my life, just from my 40s onwards, and I didn't really take care of myself prior to that in terms of exercise and nutrition. But when I turned 40, I thought, okay, let's make a go of it. And as we were talking about earlier, it's not dissimilar to personal finance, is it? And so I just wanted to monitor the calories that I was consuming, and that really effectively is a budget. So I used Pocketsmith to track the number of calories I took in for every meal. And what this means is, unfortunately, weighing your food to start with to see if a meal's 350, 400, 500 calories. But then if I keep repeating the same things, I have a good gauge as to what I'm going to be consuming. And it worked. So it helped me, much like with personal finance. And I did not expect to find these principles so well aligned in nutrition and personal finance as well. Measuring is key, tracking and keeping yourself accountable, and being okay to roll with the punches. Like some days it's going to be 1,000 calorie pizza. So what? It's about knowing what you're quote unquote spending those calories on.
Yeah.
And then rolling with it and going, okay, well, maybe I will eat better, or I'll just move a little bit more. Yeah. So yeah.
I love it. I love that you could use, you're like the number one fan of the thing that you've created, right? Yes. But it's really cool, because I think of that analogy as well. And I think about how our health, we invest in our health.
Yeah.
We do the things that we want to do. I think the world is starting to wake up to this idea of mental health and like that sort of thing as well, like feeding your brain the right information, getting help, getting support. And so like these different things that you can invest in, and just the fact that you use Pocketsmith to try and do that is really cool. Now, obviously people know we've got a partnership with Pocketsmith. We use the tool at home, and I'll ask you I'll explain what this means later on the show, but I think of it as like the gold standard. Over Christmas, something I didn't tell you actually off air was over Christmas, I made my calendar available to everyone on our mailing list. So there was a whole thing there, right, Jason?
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, so there's a whole thing there. Normally I don't get time to do it. Normally I'm in front of this mic or the camera or whatever. And so I just love catching up with people. And because of our community and the way we're all kind of like-minded, it was just like catching up with friends I haven't seen for a while. And what I realized in one day, I actually had 27 meetings, which was which was huge.
In 15-minute increments?
Half an hour.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't realize with Calendly, that?
Yes.
Yeah. I made that available.
People just jump in and block you out.
And I was like, cool. Then I emailed a bunch of people that after 6 p.m. being like, listen, guys, I'm going to be wrecked by the time 6 p.m. or 11 p.m. rolls around. I didn't know this. This is a pro tip for next time. I asked everyone to move it. A lot of them did move it to a more convenient time for everyone. But that reopened in Calendly. So then it refilled instantly.
No. I was about to ask, how did you find time to eat and pee? Two of the most life-affirming things you can do on a regular workday.
It was crazy, right? But what I was thinking is a lot of the people in that community were like really engaged with their finances. Yeah. Not to the point where it was an obsession or something, but just to the point where they're like super curious, super passionate, and they were using Pocketsmith. They've been just telling you, like, some of the people in our community just love it so much they just want to help other people use it.
Oh, that feels so great.
Yeah, which is a cool like place to be in terms of the product and brand and everything.
Yes.
Speaking of, there was one final story I'm hoping you can relive for us before we get into like budgeting and money management and forecasting and all that sort of stuff, which is, I did hear a story that Pocketsmith was released in Japan.
Being released is it's a bit of a stretch, but yes,
Okay.
This is a startup story. It's a startup lesson. So this is when we might have been 6 months old, and we'd been releasing. We put the product out there.
Yep.
I don't think we're charging any money for it yet. My co-founder might be able to clarify. And we were featured in a Japanese newsletter that was very popular. And there was an influx of people coming in from Japan, and we're like, what's going on? This looks like it could be something. But lesson number one in startup land: don't be easily distracted. We were always open to a little bit of serendipity, but we thought, okay, look, let's go all in. Like, Japan could be our market. We don't speak the language, but finance is the universal language of love. So we went ahead and translated Pocketsmith into Japanese, likely very poorly, because we couldn't read it. So, then there was an interesting spell. So we had a Japanese website. It was so much fun to see everything in a completely different language. Yeah. But again, we were quite culturally blind, I think, to we're so much more aware now, I think, of how people think about their finances globally. But back then it was like, here's a product, here it is in Japanese. And ultimately, I think, what did James say? We got like maybe 7 Japanese customers from it. So it was not a success by any measure. And then we were left with this Japanese language layer that we had to continue to update whenever we updated any of the features in the product. So this was a bad call. So we eventually sunset that. Today, I just did a check earlier today, we've got about 700 Japanese users. So, we're not really optimized for that market, but it was certainly a fun little spell of being featured. And I think that back then we had a calendar, and that was quite universal in terms of how someone would perceive their money. And we might make a stab at it again in the future. But
maybe some more vintage shopping trips, tax deductible, maybe.
Absolutely tax deductible. Yeah.
Not advice. One of the things you said last time actually was that Pocketsmith, when you built it, was built in iCal, which is like calendar.
Oh man, yeah, this goes way back. Yes, so iCal was the Mac OS 10, what they called it then. It was the calendar app for the Mac. And before we actually launched the company, I'd actually used iCal to manage my money. And the calendar is still a key feature in Pocketsmith. It's the idea that you can not only take a look at your historical finances, but you can actually plan what's coming up ahead.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I just wanted to know when my bills were coming in, when I was going to get paid, and most importantly, how much I was going to have every day going forward into the future. And so I wrote a script just to very roughly display this in iCal, so I could jump forward in 6 months and go, okay, that's where I'm going to be. And that sense of empowerment and control over my money, like looking forward, that was the genesis for our product and what it does today.
Because and then you can see, like, the thing that makes Pocketsmith powerful in that visualization aspect is you can see it like in kind of like chronological order. You can see it in different charts, but you can also visualize that, and you can like predict spending, predict cash flows, forecast even for people that are interested, like net worth and assets and all that stuff.
And you could use, most people I would say use a slice of Pocketsmith. They don't use all of it. And they, as someone who's used it myself for the last 16 years, my life has changed a lot in that time. And I have found myself moving into different parts of the product when they become more meaningful to me. And so that's why we're such nerds about money, right? We used to call Pocketsmith a time machine for your money. So you could see the past, you could basically pull in 10 years of transactions. So if you're a data hoarder like I am, I love going back and revisiting memories from where I was like 10 years ago. Where did I spend my money? How's that changed between the person I was then to the person I am today? And then there's the present, which is, okay, can we keep tabs on what's happening right now? And the future, based on my current spending, what does my forecast look like? What is it, how do I plan? What does future me look like? Can I be intentional, as you said earlier, about the things I want to do in my life, rather than have it be a box ticking exercise for the car or the home or the clothes that I need to have? What are these life-affirming experiences that I intend to fill my life with, and how do I plan for that?
Yeah, I love that. The time machine idea is kind of cool too. Actually, someone did message me. Shout out to Andrew over the break. He said because we spoke, he was one of the people that spoke to me over Christmas. It was a great catch up. And he was like, crazy how he just got all of these things categorized and subcategorized. He was just like, and he's like a prolific user, and he was blown away by that, which is really cool. So for folks that are new, there's going to be a lot of people that are new-ish to managing their money. They want to do better, just like me. Like I've been doing it not quite 16 years, although actually come to think of it, yeah, it's probably about that. I'm aging myself, but that's yeah, it's fair to say longer than that. Let's be honest. So like I'm still getting better at it, right? I only started using Pocketsmith mid to late 2024. For people that are right at the beginning, right, and they're thinking, I want to, like, why would I go on this learning curve and learn about money? And like where my money's going, where I'm going to be in the future, and make change. Can you share some examples that, if you have them off the top of your head, great. If not, it's okay. But can you share some examples of like maybe user stories or like examples of where money has become tracked and the impact that that's had on someone's life? Does that make sense? So not in a strict like financial planner-y type of sense, but just generally.
Yeah, like it comes down to the habits and the things that you do in your life. And we do have a user who was really looking to kick the smoking habit. Yep. And we all know cigarettes are not getting any cheaper. And it's also not the best thing to do for your health. And so the motivator for this particular customer was actually seeing how much money went into this particular habit or hobby. And ultimately, it's not a judgment call. You can choose to spend your money on whatever you want. But for him, it was a wake-up call. And it presented this person with the opportunity to either spend the money on cigarettes or spend it on something else. And maybe it's time for a change. And that helped. That was an inflection point for this particular customer. I think what I love is the different routes that people have into their money. We do have, like we unexpectedly been hearing from people in the ADHD community who have been looking for a tool that could really map their way to the way their brains work, which is let's get in and solve a whole bunch of problems and get a whole bunch of data together and insights. And one of the ways that it's been described to me by an ADHD user is, I'm going to love your product intensely for 3 weeks. And I'm going to do everything I can. And what it lets me do is I can dig into all of the features. So they would be probably one of the segments of customers that use 100% of the products at once. And then they'll say, okay, and then we'll move on. But then we've set up the rules. We've set up all of the automation so that we can come back once a year and everything still works. So the route to answer your question, I suppose, for people who are starting out, I think the best thing to do is to think about one thing that you're looking to answer about your money. It can be overwhelming to think about your net worth, your tracking, your budgeting, retirement. These are very big concepts. The best place to start is, what is one thing I'd like to find out about my money? And it could be groceries. How much do I spend on groceries? Most people don't really know. And just for a lark, find out. And that will lead to other questions. Okay, now transport perhaps, or then it might lead into, okay, well, am I actually earning more than I'm spending? And then where is my money going? So it's like an ongoing conversation that you have with yourself. So any advice I've had for people starting out, please start from a very narrow slice and listen to yourself and enjoy the process. We do have, Pocketsmith can have a steep learning curve in that regard, right? But last year, we started something new we launched a new feature that lets people start their Pocketsmith journey in a sort of a back to front fashion, which is quite fun. So you can pick a number of different paths to start. Most of our hardcore users will go in, they'll link their accounts, and then they start categorizing and they're getting a lot of data.
That's what I did.
Yeah. For people who haven't had experience with budgeting tools or spreadsheets, we've got a path where you start, and it's a questionnaire. The first thing we ask you is, what are some of your life activities? You might pick 5. So I like to go to the gym. I like to travel. I like to eat. When you lock that in, the next question is, well, are you managing one income or multiple incomes for your household? And then the third question is, okay, let's just estimate. Take a guess. How much do you think you earn every month or every week? And then you guess for each of your activities, how much you might spend on it. So how much do you think you spend on eating out? And the fun part is just putting an estimate in. And then when you're done, it takes like 2.5 minutes. We'll show you some data. We'll show you the graphs of your money flowing in, money flowing out, your spending breakdown. And that will give you a sense of what financial reporting looks like without you having to connect your account and do any of that intense stuff. And from there, you can decide, okay, how do my estimates relate to reality? And at that point, you can choose to connect your account. So typically, people come in, they bring the transactions in, and they categorize them. But what we're encouraging people to do with this path is pick your categories first. Use your own language, use your own life concepts to set up your budget, and then put your money into these categories.
Yeah, that's great. It's actually a lot easier for people. It's like a wizard.
Yes,
it is. Like a setup
it's exactly
wizard
a wizard.
thing.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things I want to talk to you about is
wizards.
Wizards actually.
Beards, staff, long sleeves.
New Zealand, Lord of the Rings, isn't that the whole thing?
Yeah, everyone's a wizard now. I mean, yeah.
But no, I wanted to talk to you about that because I've got obviously the app on my phone and everything. My wife and I've been using it.
Yes.
But a lot of people kind of just want to start straight out of the box, and that's kind of like as in they want to try and have those early wins, those feedback loops of feeling better, doing the right thing without feeling overwhelmed. And I know there's a bunch of guides and all that type of stuff on the Pocketsmith website as well. And for folks that have never done this before, it actually is like if I'm thinking to the ADHD brain thing, which I can relate to, is
likewise
3 weeks in, bang, done, like amazing.
Yep.
But a lot of people don't have that ability to do that straight away. But the fact that you have that wizard is kind of cool. And I feel like for folks that maybe need another analogy of what it's kind of like, I liken it to that zero for individuals and couples and family units and that sort of stuff, because it has like all the features as in, and this is only relatable for business owners, but it allows you to automate so much in one place.
Yeah.
And it's got the categories, it's got the forecast. That's what makes it super powerful, I think. You guys are in Melbourne, Dora and yourself, for a bunch of different reasons.
Yes.
Which is great. It's
the heat is one of them.
The heat. The mini heat wave. Tomorrow.
We need to sweat out the toxins. So thank you, Melbourne.
Tomorrow you actually have a bunch of different stuff to do, but hopefully the weather's a bit cooler tomorrow. Can you relive, there's 2 things actually you mentioned when we were just having a chit chat before. One is this idea of Gen Zs using money, because anyone can go to the Pocketsmith website. I'll put a link in the show notes to this in particular, and you can see this like global heat map of spending. I don't know, what do you call it?
It's our global spending map.
And it kind of shows utility bills.
It's a ton of
versus like if someone's in California versus Australia. It's kind of crazy. It's really cool to see. But you said something, you've been analyzing data for the last year, and in particular for Gen Z.
Gen Zs, yes.
Yeah, what have you found?
I mean, we have a huge respect for Gen Zs. They are, and this is me relating to when I was going through uni in the 1990s, and it was a long time ago. We thought about money very differently then. I think we were quite, naive relative to the Gen Zs today. And when we first founded Pocketsmith, and we're based in Dunedin, New Zealand, which is home to the University of Otago. That's New Zealand's oldest university. And obviously, the recommendations for us as a startup would be, hey, you should introduce this to the students. But looking at our experiences, when we really think back to how we spent money as students, we're like, no, they're not going to be able to use this because they can afford to be broke. They want to have fun with their money, and they're not going to start planning until their mid-20s, maybe 30s, or when they have a significant life stage change, like a mortgage or a relationship or a baby. But that, we've learned in the last couple of years is not true anymore for Gen Z. Gen Zs are in a world where they are disadvantaged, particularly in terms of the housing market. They are forced to they have to advocate for themselves financially in many ways, but they also have a huge opportunity in terms of the multiple sets of tools. Many are side hustling already at an early age, and so they're becoming financially aware and financially disciplined much more so than I ever was at that age. And it's been remarkable, and it's been so much fun discovering that. And so as a 16-year-old product, we are discovering a whole new audience in the younger market where we never thought. We thought we were, like our audience is just going to grow old with us and look like wizards. But no, we're the Gen Zs are breathing a new life into the product and breathing a new life. Like they're giving us more purpose, that we're working with a whole bunch of very smart, very motivated people.
It's interesting because, I've got to admit, like when I was going through uni, it was like survival mode. And maybe ramen, the free sausages at Monash University when I was there for a bit, like that was kind of the big things. But if we take the other end of the spectrum, then and this is actually a good segue into something that we wanted to talk about, which is this idea of open banking, which is a kind of foreign concept in terms of like it being from the finance world, which people don't really understand. So I'll get you to clear that up. But you had a story about your mum.
About my mum.
And trying to help her with something, which is a great way to kind of introduce us to this topic, I think.
Yes. So open banking is a bit of a mystery to many Australians. And last we saw, maybe 2% of Australians have engaged with open banking, and most don't really understand what it is because it sounds like a really big concept. The consumer data right is something that is meant to bring better competition to the market, and everyone's heard that line before. But what does it mean? The other part of it is it's meant to bring financial inclusivity to Australians as well. And what does that mean? So this anecdote with my mom is probably one that I feel describes it really well. So Dad passed away a couple of years ago, and he was the household CFO. He took control of the household finances, and when as he got sicker, he passed of lung cancer. We worked together as a family to migrate that role over to Mum's, and I could be there to help her out. She lives in Malaysia, and they don't have open banking there. So she's 75 years old. We were trying to, going right back to, let's start our personal finance journey, right? What was that one question we wanted to answer? And so for Mum, it was, okay, how much are you spending every month? Because she's in that de-accumulation phase, right? So we want to understand how much she's spending and how long her savings are going to last. So simple question, how much are you spending every month for the last 6 months? Now, to get that data, and she's now, I'm so proud of her. She's adept at paying the bills and using online banking, and she's just completely risen to the occasion. And I wish that my dad was around to see that, and I think they probably would have been much better with their finances. and he sort of like shared the load. In order to get this data, we had to pull down a bunch of PDFs, which are not very accessible in terms of getting the data out right. So here I am, the founder of a company that builds personal finance software, and I am sort of up against a brick wall because I have to then extract this data and put it into a spreadsheet and then load it into Pocketsmith just to get 6 column charts, 6 columns in a chart to show us how much she's been spending. This took me 3 hours. It was a complete grind. And I just, thought to myself, how is it possible that my mom cannot get access to such a clear, important insight? And if I had to do this, I wouldn't, and this I think sums up what we're seeing here, which is financial exclusion in broad daylight. So many people are excluded from these key insights that will help them make better decisions about their finances. And we're well aware of the time value of money. Sometimes you look back and go, I wish I'd done this 5 years ago. Why hadn't I? Well, it's because in a large part, this information isn't readily accessible. So going right back to what open banking does. Open banking is here to allow us to securely share our financial data with third parties, tools like Pocketsmith, that will give you access to the insights that you deserve. And it's long overdue. So I hope that clears it up a little bit for the
because it does. It makes like I as you're saying that, like, no shade on Australian Super, but my wife and I have been redoing our insurances through a financial advisor that does insurance called Sky, and they're like, "Hey guys, just need you to go and find your current insurance so we can compare that to the new insurance." So my wife did it, then I did it, and the process was like brain numbing and confusing. But then she got someone on the other end that kind of, I don't know, it was a whole thing. She didn't want to give my wife her information, which was bizarre. But then I called up and they're like, yep, no worries, here you go.
All right.
And so, but imagine, for example, she wasn't my wife and I wasn't a finance guy and she wasn't, you know, who she is, intelligent and all that sort of stuff. That would have been so hard.
Yes.
And it's already an overwhelming thing, finance writ large.
Yep.
To then make it more difficult or inaccessible is just...
I mean, we'd like to think of ourselves as being privileged to have the education, to have the tools and the experience to do this, and still we find it hard. And this really gets my goat. I think it just needs to be better. It needs to be better. And yes, sure, it begins with education in schools, but tooling to the general population, for the general population, it needs to happen. It needed to happen a long time ago. So I'm very excited about what open banking can bring. And I'd encourage the listeners to go learn more about it. Talk to your banks about it. Talk to your friends about it. And just ensure, like, don't settle for the status quo, because you don't want to be excluded. It's not fair that people like my mom can't get an insight into how much she's been spending, just so that she can figure out how to make decisions going forward. And it's not fair that she has to rely on somebody else to help her get to that point. She's a smart woman, and it's just access to data. That's very important.
Yeah, and that's what the whole open banking thing is about, right? Like, it's about giving consumers some control, because historically the banks didn't want you to switch mortgages, didn't want you to switch bank accounts, didn't want blah, 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 blah. And that's just an exciting thing for most people to kind of see take place. And over the next 10 years, as long as we keep bringing it up and reminding everyone to take 100%. Advantage of it,
yes,
we'll see more good things come from this. Like, I feel like if people wonder why, like, you can't just send and receive money all the time instantly, or if you can't even just see a simple chart of your money, well, you're just starting to see why now. And there's probably two takeaways from this. One, if you're new to finances, you're managing it, you want to get on top of it, and you find it hard, welcome. We're all here. We're all in the same boat. It sucks, but just keep going because it's worth it. And the second one is, let's just take advantage of the tools that use those technologies to really make a difference.
Don't forget, start with one question. Just ask one question about your money that you don't know the answer to, and go from there.
Yeah. Hey, off the cuff, I think I'm allowed to ask this. You said that there was like 600 or 700 users in Japan.
Yes.
How many users do you have around the world?
About over 300,000 at present, yeah.
Wow.
Over 190 countries. That's how lucky we are to, when we founded the company,
Congrats. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. We're humanists at heart, right? So when James and I founded the company, we wanted to build a product that could be used by people all over the world. And finance just happened to be the hook. James looked at this calendar thing, he got it, and we thought, okay, let's roll with it. But it could have easily been anything else. And we're just really passionate about solving the problems that are in our space, in personal finance. So that's why we have the product that we have today, which can basically do just about everything. But that's part of the fun of being in business, is actually to be able to have conversations with people from all corners of the world and realize ultimately we're kind of the same. Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to ask a question. Your teacher used to say there's no dumb questions. As someone that records podcasts and has maybe 20,000 people listen, this could potentially go sideways on me, but why is it called Pocketsmith?
Oh, that's a really good question.
That's what all the teachers say.
Well, first of all, when you're starting a company, you want to find something that is unique. So particularly for a domain, right? And when we were founded, the people were coming up with weird names without vowels and stuff, just to get a unique name. We wanted something pronounceable, as well. So we didn't have to say this is Zoom with like 4 O's. That's going to get tedious. But the meaning of the word is significant. So pocket is a way to talk about money, right? So you're out of pocket or you've got a pocketbook. It's traditionally a reference to finance. And a smith is a maker, or it is someone who creates or someone who tools around with things. So a pocketsmith could be looked at 2 ways. It's either the tool that you use for your money, or it might be you. You're the pocketsmith that, and our product is your forge, and you're in there working on your finances. So that's what it means. Yeah.
Can I tell you, I thought it was like pocketsmith as in like a blacksmith that unlocks things.
Oh, well, that's doable too. Yeah. So are you the blacksmith, or is pocketsmith the blacksmith?
Pocketsmith's the blacksmith, because I got this. I can use it to unlock my finances. That's why I thought about it. I don't know. I've just taken branding in a whole different direction. Do not come to me for that type of advice.
Wait, you said blacksmith, but are you thinking locksmith?
Locksmith. That's what I'm thinking. Yes, locksmith, not blacksmith. What am I thinking? Yeah.
Blacksmiths are awesome. Like they they too have huge beards, big arms, and they bang on things to shape them.
I'm thinking locksmith to unlock.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. The notion of being a smith is core to the culture of our company. We are problem solvers, and smiths are that. They make things, and we build things to enable our users to build things themselves. And that's part of the fun of why we do what we do.
Great. Now I've got 2 more questions for you before I get to that. Anyone that wants to try Pocketsmith, there is a link in your podcast player in the YouTube description. You get a steep discount, and it's like 2 months. It's basically nothing that you pay, but there is a fee, and it gives you a sense of all the tools that we've been talking about, how powerful it can be, the different banks, things that you can link in if you've got shares and that sort of stuff, a mortgage. Don't worry about it. It's all in the same place. Like I link 2 different banks and a credit card. I'm not supposed to say that, but no, credit card, all in the one place, and it makes so much sense. Now, okay, I've got 2 more questions, which is number 1, if you had a financial superpower, what would it be?
I think it'd be amazing to see what things are worth. Can you imagine putting on a pair of glasses and like even in this room, right? You look at the Mac over there, look at the mic, and a little like a price sticker pops up.
Yeah, I can tell you it's painful.
There we go, right?
Yeah.
I've often you've walked into a beautiful living room, for example, and you look around and how much is the sofa worth, or the walls, or the windows, and whatnot. I think that would give you real context for the environment, and also would help you, I guess, figure out what you value relative to what you're seeing in the room.
Yeah.
I think it'd be amazing to also see where people have been quite smart about their purchases. You might look at what looks like a $15,000 couch and go, "Whoa, this person got it for $2,500." So all of these, that would be an awesome superpower, I think. Just to identify the worth of things around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're an accounting nerd, you could say, well, the depreciation schedule as well. So that would be it. Yeah.
It would be really worthwhile for you, because if you're vintage shopping, you could be like, that is road and gun.
Yeah. So you look at me and there's like a $25 price tag that pops up. And then the question for you would be like, well, how come? And well, because I found this at a shop in Bondi and I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I like that. Last one is, you talk about like the humanist side of things. And we spoke about that in a previous catch-up we had. I'll put a link in the show notes to that too. It was an amazing conversation, by the way, at least from your side of the table. But a question that is here is, what has delighted you about money in other cultures? Because you get around, like you mentioned, Naples, Japan. You're obviously here in Oz right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Japan example is a really good one. I just love the notion of passing things on and reusability. And this is, tightly within the scope of vintage shopping. And I think the idea of, I don't know, how do I even put it? The idea of acknowledging the value of a good and respecting it and putting it back on the market is really quite wonderful. This is probably counter to, I suppose, fast fashion, where you buy something new that is cheap, but that doesn't last, and then it goes into the tip. And it seems a very basic analogy, but it's one that I think should carry on. I love the idea of reuse and extension. I practice that too in my personal life, right? So I've got a house that is turning 100 in 2027, and there've been times where I haven't had the finances to do the repairs to it, but it's taken care of me. It's kept me warm, and now that I've got a bit of time and a bit of money, going back in and restoring it, I'm never going to sell it. I don't actually have any kids to pass it on to, so it might have to be a home for cats at some point. But I think about the people who've lived in it and the families who've experienced joy, and I really do feel that there's a sense of, I don't know, maybe I'm just being overly romantic about it, but there's a sense of continuity, and you can tell when you put something on, if you walk into a place that there's been joy associated with it, that it's worth investing in and worth continuing. How that strictly relates to finance, I don't even know, but I think that the understanding of how acknowledging the value in a good is probably something that underpins some pretty good financial habits.
Yeah, it does indeed. I love that idea of, again, kind of like being mindful about your money. I'm much the same with our house. We're very blessed. Obviously, housing is very expensive, but even with me now, I think about like repairs or things that I might need to do to upkeep the house and whatever. And I think about what's going to last the test of time, because you go to Europe or go to places where there's significant history in terms of architecture, and you get a sense of this could stand for 50 years. It could stand beyond me. And so if you do it right, that's great. And another thing is I do not like spending money on clothes. I'm just one of these people. I just like what's the utility? As in like, what do I get from this? But the one brand I spend money on continuously is Patagonia, which I've got on right now, which is very financy. I didn't realize that was a whole thing, but
it is very financy. You need the Patagonia, this vest and a button up, and you're right there. That's it.
You know what? I didn't know that, so that's lean into it. But I now have I'm constantly on watch for when there's 40% off sales, and the reason is that it might cost a little bit more, but I only have to buy one or two of them, and it suits my personality.
Yes.
I don't want to spend a lot of money. I don't want to go shopping a lot. So for me, get something that stands the test of time. If they can reprint it, even better. Yeah. All of those types of things. So
it's okay to have your clothes be an expression of who you are. And I think that's part of the fun of dressing up a little bit, and it's also fun to see how people express themselves in their clothing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Yeah. Well, mate, this has been heaps of fun to catch up with you once again.
Thanks for having us back. I
feel like next time it's going to be in your backyard.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to hold you to that.
We'll go on the road and come over to you guys. But I really appreciate it. Pocketsmith is the place to go. It's the gold standard for basically everyone in the Rask community now. And really appreciate you taking the time out to join me.
Thank you so much. And we've loved coming back here, and we always have a great time on your podcast. So we're looking forward to the next time.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.